Joshua chapter 20 is where we are tonight, and it's only 9 verses long, the whole chapter. So I'm going to read all of it, and then I'm going to pray, and then we're going to dig out chapter 20 and get into chapter 21 and maybe even chapter 22. We'll see. Lord, thank you for this time we can gather together in your house tonight. We just pray that you would bless your word now as we study it together. I thank you for everybody here tonight and for those who are watching online. We thank you in advance for those who are going to be baptized tonight. We just give you praise for changing lives. And we thank you, Jesus, that you still do that today. And we love you and we give you praise, glory, and honor. In Jesus' name we pray these things. And everyone said, amen. All right, Joshua chapter 20, it says this, "The Lord also spoke to Joshua, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, Appoint for yourselves cities of refuge." You can highlight that or underline that. Cities of refuge, of which I spoke to you through Moses, that the slayer who kills a person accidentally or unintentionally may flee there, and they shall be your refuge from the avenger of blood. And when he flees to one of those cities and stands at the entrance of the gate of the city and declares his case in the hearing of the elders of that city, they shall take him into the city as one of them and give him a place that he may dwell among them. And then if the avenger of blood pursues him, they shall not deliver the slayer into his hand, because he struck his neighbor unintentionally, but did not hate him beforehand. And he shall dwell in that city until he stands before the congregation for judgment, and until the death of the one who is high priest in those days. Then the slayer may return and come to his own city and his own house, to the city from which he fled. And so they appointed Kadesh in Galilee, in the mountains of Naphtali, Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim, and Kiriath Arba, which is Hebron, in the mountains of Judah. And on the other side of the Jordan, by Jericho eastward, they assigned Bezer in the wilderness on the plain, from the tribe of Reuben, Ramoth in Gilead from the tribe of Gad, and Golan in Bashan from the tribe of Manasseh. These were the cities appointed for all the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwelt among them, that whoever killed a person accidentally might flee there and not die by the hand of the avenger of blood until he stood before the congregation. Okay, so what is this chapter all about? So again, remember that when the children of Israel came into the promised land, they received an allotment of land by the casting of lots, and it was divided out among the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of the things that God is making provision for here in this 20th chapter is a place of refuge, a city of refuge for someone who accidentally, now that's key to this, who accidentally or unintentionally killed his or her neighbor. And so they were 6 cities that were marked as cities of refuge to which you could flee if you ever killed someone accidentally. Now, 3 of these cities were on the western side of the Jordan River, and 3 of the cities were on the eastern side of the Jordan River to spread it out among the territory of the 12 tribes. So that if, again, you killed someone accidentally, you could flee to this city and be protected. Not that you should not still face accountability, because even accidental death has some consequences, but that you would not be outright killed by the avenger of blood. Now that phrase you might have noticed as we read through chapter 20, the avenger of blood, if you notice the first time it's used is in verse 3. At the end of verse 3, it talks about the avenger of blood. In Hebrew, it's one word, goel, G-O-E-L. Now, a goel was someone who was appointed by a family to seek vengeance upon a death. You know, you have to remember, this is before the days of law enforcement. There were no police officers who would try to, keep the peace and make sure the law was being upheld. These were the days, kind of in our more recent history, like the Hatfields and McCoys. If you didn't like somebody, you would just, take the law into your own hands. And it was like the Wild West back in these days. And so what would happen is, if somebody in your family was accidentally killed, then the family would appoint an individual from within the family to get vengeance on the death of their loved one. And that Goel, that person who was selected by the family, was called here in English the avenger of blood. But what God is doing here is He's distinguishing between murder, okay, and killing. Now, there's a difference between premeditated murder, even in our laws today, but in biblical times too, there's a difference between premeditated murder and accidental homicide or involuntary manslaughter. And so I want to talk about this a little bit so that we understand from a biblical vantage point here what God thinks about the difference here. Because there is a difference in the Bible between murdering, the Hebrew word is ratzach, and killing, the Hebrew word is nakah. Murder is condemned in the Bible, but killing is sometimes justified. Now let me explain. If you know your 10 commandments, you know that commandment number 6 is, in the King James, thou shalt not kill, but New King James and NIV translates the word better because it is actually ratzach in the 6th commandment in Exodus chapter 20. It's you shall not murder. And in fact, you shall not murder, it's 4 words in English, but in Hebrew it's only 2 words. Lo ratzach, no murder. No murder. And so God condemns murder, which is the premeditated, intentional, deliberate taking of another person's life. God condemns that in the Bible. But there are some exceptions to the 6th commandment, and I'll put them up on the screen for you. Here are these exceptions. One exception is, as I mentioned, accidental homicide. Now, chapter 20 here of Joshua is all about that. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But this is accidental homicide. This is, involuntary manslaughter. This is when you kill someone, but it's an accident. For example, somebody is chopping wood and you're swinging an axe. Well, the axe head flies off the handle, hits somebody else in their head and kills them. Okay, that's accidental. But nevertheless, somebody's died, and you were the cause of it. So that's accidental homicide. And in Numbers chapter 35, the Bible spells out the reality that sometimes you might accidentally kill an individual. So how is that person to be treated? Because that is not a violation of the 6th commandment. That's not premeditated, ruthless, deliberate taking of another person's life. The second exception to the 6th commandment is there on your screens. It's justifiable homicide. Now, justifiable homicide has 2 components to it. One is self-defense. In Exodus 22, verse 2, it specifically says if a thief breaks into your house and intends to do you harm, it's justifiable homicide if you defend yourself. Self-defense is still a defense today for the taking of another individual's life if it is, in fact, for the purpose of protecting your own life or that of your family. If if a thief breaks in or somebody trying to kill you, it's okay for you to defend yourself in this way. And the Bible spells it out that way. And then the other thing, and I get this often, particularly from law enforcement officers or people in the military saying, I've killed people in the line of duty. And, am I violating the 6th commandment? The answer is no. Because those who are an extension of the government, Romans 13:4 talks about how those who bear the sword are given authority by the government to, in fact, in Romans 13:4 it says, as ministers of God, to carry out His justice against the evil in the world. And so part of government, like it or not, but part of government is to restrain evil in the world. And so government then can sanction times of war and in terms of, law enforcement having to, defend the country or, take somebody out because it's justifiable. And of course that's become a very debatable topic these days, but done right and done properly, these things are allowed in Scripture on the basis of self-defense or on the basis of law enforcement or military in the line of duty. And then the third exception to the sixth commandment is capital punishment. The Bible does allow for capital punishment. You know, it's interesting that when you think about the sixth commandment, you shall not murder, lo ratzach, that doesn't come until Exodus chapter 20. That doesn't come until the Mosaic law is introduced. But you know this? Before Moses was inspired by God to pen the Mosaic law, all the way back in Genesis chapter 9, and I'll read it to you. This is after the ark came to settle on Mount Ararat, and one of the things that God said as Noah and his family come off the ark in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, God says, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God he made man. In other words, what we even read before the Mosaic law was given, all the way back at the time of Noah on Mount Ararat, God is saying, listen, if man deliberately, intentionally takes the life of another man, he shall be held accountable for that. That's a violation of what will end up being the sixth commandment. And God says, why? Because it's a desecration of my image. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. We are created in His image and in His likeness. And when someone deliberately, intentionally takes another individual's life, that is a desecration of the image of God, because you're taking the life of an individual who's created in the image and likeness of God. And so God says, you'll be held accountable for that. You shed innocent blood, your life, your blood shall be shed. That's Genesis 9:6. Jesus even says in Matthew 26:52, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. You take up the sword and you deliberately, intentionally, premeditatedly murder someone, the sword will be coming against you too. So these are three exceptions to the sixth commandment. And what you have back here in Joshua chapter 20 is basically an explanation of how God made provision for the first one on this list, which is accidental homicide. If you are, you're chopping wood, just to use that illustration, the axe head flies off, you end up killing somebody, what are you to do? Well, the family of the person you killed is going to come after you. So what do you need to do? You need to flee to a city of refuge. And that's what this chapter is all about. So there's 6 that were marked out within the territory of the tribes. And one of these cities, whichever one was closest, you could run there. And you could make your defense. And what would happen is you would go to the door, the gate of the city of one of these 6, and you could explain your case. The elders would hear you out and then take you in. And they would protect you from, because if it was accidental and unintentional, they would protect you from being murdered by someone who's just angry at what you've done. And they could be guilty, the other person, the avenger of blood, the goel, could be guilty of murder, because now they're just angry at what you did. So they want to deliberately kill you, when you know it was an accident. And so you flee to find refuge in one of these cities. And you would be allowed to remain there. Now, if the elders of the town found that it was justifiable, then you could live out your life in that city. If you ever left that city, all bets were off, and the goel could kill you. So you had to remain, if you wanted to keep your life, you had to remain in that city. Now there's an interesting little phrase here though. It says this, if you jump back to verse 6, it says, and he shall dwell in that city until he stands before the congregation for judgment. Okay, in other words, if he's found to be not guilty on the basis that it was accidental, okay, not intentional, not deliberate, it says, and until the death of the one who is high priest in those days. Then the slayer, the one who accidentally killed somebody, may return and come to his own city and his own house, to the city from which he fled. It's an interesting little statement there, and here's why it's important for us to hear this. Because one of the things that you got when you fled to a city of refuge was this temporary protection. And the day that you could return to your hometown from which you fled was when the high priest died. Now there's this interesting foreshadowing here. Because here's the beautiful parallel for us. A city of refuge was only for those who were innocent, in the sense that what they did was accidental. They didn't mean it. They weren't deliberate. They didn't intentionally want to kill somebody. The city of refuge were for those who were, quote, innocent. And when you were finally free was when the high priest died. Whoever was high priest at that time, however long that took. The beautiful parallel for us, of course, is Jesus is our city of refuge. But he's the one that we run to, not because we're innocent. It's not a refuge for the innocent. Jesus is our refuge because we're guilty. The city of refuge then was only for the innocent. The city of refuge for us now, Jesus, is for the guilty. And we're all guilty. But the beautiful thing about what Christ did was when he dies on the cross, he becomes our refuge for us, and we run to him and we find forgiveness for our guilt. So this provision that God makes here is actually a picture for us of the greater refuge that we have in Jesus, because we're guilty and he's the one who can forgive us. And the Bible is full of, I'll just read a couple of examples from the book of Psalms. The Bible is full of this parallel talking about how God is our refuge, all through just the Psalms. Listen to Psalm 9, verse 9. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. In Psalm 46, 1 and 2, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore we shall not fear. In Psalm 91, 1 and 2, he who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge, my fortress, my God. In him I will trust. Amen? So he is our refuge, and so God provided these cities of refuge for people to not be prosecuted for something that was accidental. And the Lord is our refuge even when we do things intentionally and we're guilty. We can find forgiveness and grace with him. Into chapter 21. In chapter 21 now, if you remember from our previous studies, the 12 tribes of Israel had different land allotments except for the Levites, the tribe of Levi. The descendants of Levi, because they were a priestly order, they were to find their inheritance in the Lord alone. So they were not given large land tracts. However, they needed a place to live, so they were given towns. They were given cities. And chapter 21 is about these different cities that are given to the Levites. And you'll notice, we're not going to read through all of them. You can thank me later. There are 48 cities that the Levites are given. Now, at the end of the book of Numbers, the tribe of Levi numbers 23,000. So 23,000 are going to be, Levites are going to be distributed among 48 cities or towns. So that's roughly about 480, give or take, per town that they would live in as their inheritance. They would just get these various cities. So chapter 21, it says, Then the heads of the fathers' houses of the Levites came near to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua the son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers' houses of the tribes of the children of Israel. And they spoke to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, saying, The Lord commanded through Moses to give us cities to dwell in, with their common lands for our livestock. And so the children of Israel gave to the Levites from their common lands, gave to the Levites from their inheritance at the commandment of the Lord, these cities and their common land. So here's what happened. They're going to cast lots now for the various cities within the tribal allotments. So from the tribe of Judah, you're going to have to give up some cities. And from the tribe of Issachar, you're going to have to give up some cities. From the tribe of Zebulun, you're going to have to give up some cities so that the Levites can live there. And so it separates it. And I'll just read a little bit of this. Verse 4. Now the lot came out for the families of the Kohathites, and the children of Aaron the priest, who were of the Levites, had 13 cities by lot from the tribe of Judah, from the tribe of Simeon, and from the tribe of Benjamin. The rest of the children of Kohath had 10 cities by lot from the families of the tribe of Ephraim, from the tribe of Dan, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh. And the children of Gershon had 13 cities by lot from the families of the tribe of Issachar, from the tribe of Asher, from the tribe of Naphtali, and from the half-tribe of Manasseh in Bashan. The children of Merari, according to their families, had 12 cities from the tribe of Reuben, from the tribe of Gad, and from the tribe of Zebulun. And the children of Israel gave these cities with their common lands by lot to the Levites, as the Lord had commanded by the hand of Moses. So I don't know if you were counting there with me, but those were the 12 tribes that were mentioned, and various cities from each of these 12 tribes were given to the Levites as their allotment. Now, if you'll jump ahead, because I won't read all of these various cities and the names and locations. Just jump ahead to near the end of the chapter, verse 41. It says in verse 41, all the cities of the Levites within the possession of the children of Israel were 48 cities with their common lands. Every one of these cities had its common land surrounding it. Thus were all these cities. And so the Levites got a particular city, and then they got some of the pasture land around the city to raise livestock, and so they were taken care of. And notice the way the chapter ends then, verse 43. So the Lord gave to Israel all the land of which he had sworn to give to their fathers, and they took possession of it and dwelt in it. The Lord gave them rest all around, according to all that he had sworn to their fathers. And not a man of all their enemies stood against them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. Not a word failed of any good thing which the Lord had spoken to the house of Israel. All came to pass. And I love the way this chapter ends because it reminds us of three things. Number one, God keeps covenant. Everything that God says, he does. He is faithful and true to his word. And when he makes promises, he is faithful to all his promises and loving towards all he has made. So number one, God keeps covenant. Number two, God gives rest. I love the way it says that there in the middle in verse 44. The Lord gave them rest all around. The ultimate rest that we find, the peace that passes all understanding to guard our hearts and minds, is in Christ Jesus. There is a rest, there is a peace, there is a contentment that only comes from the Lord. This world does not offer it. This world offers the opposite: anxiety, fear, worry. But God offers us his rest, and only in him can we find that. So God keeps covenant. Number two, God gives rest. And number three, God gives victory, because it talks here about how now the wars are over, and God gives victory to them. It says there in verse 44, the end of verse 44, not a man of all their enemies stood against them. The Lord delivered all their enemies into their hand. And it is a good reminder because, you know, we fight a battle often that is not of flesh and blood, but of spiritual forces of evil in the heavenlies. That's Ephesians 6. And so we have to constantly be looking to the Lord to fight for us and to defend us against the enemy of our souls. And he's faithful to do that. He's faithful to do that. So God keeps covenant, God gives rest, and God gives victory. Now into chapter 22. I think we'll actually make it through this. Here's chapter 22, the background to what we're about to read. The Israelites have been waging war in combat to take the land that God had promised them away from these pagans that have taken the land that God promised on oath to the Israelites. They have been fighting for 7 years. You have to imagine how weary they are, the toll that war takes, not just in terms of a physical toll, but an emotional toll, a spiritual toll. And here in chapter 22, after 7 years of fighting, the land has been subdued. Now remember from last week's study, they didn't effectively drive out everybody. They unfortunately allowed some people to live still within their territories, which they should not, because it'll come back to haunt them. But by and large, the land has been subdued. The land has been divided by tribal allotment. They are now settling in their territories. And Joshua basically lines up the army here. He gathers the troops together, and he's basically going to give them all an honorable discharge. He's going to basically say to them, your duty is done. You can now go home to your families. you can go to your territories, you can begin to pitch your tents and live out your lives and raise your families. And so that's what chapter 22 is about. And it says in verse 1, Then Joshua called the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Remember, these are the 2.5 tribes that were living had territory on the eastern side of the Jordan River, in what today would be Jordan. And he said to them in verse 2, You have kept all that Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, and have obeyed my voice in all that I commanded you. You have not left your brethren these many days up to this day, but have kept the charge of the commandment of the Lord your God. And now the Lord your God has given rest to your brethren, as he promised them. Now therefore return, and go to your tents, and to the land of your possession, which Moses the servant of the Lord gave you on the other side of the Jordan, on the eastern side. But notice this is good advice for all of us. But take careful heed to do the commandment of the law which Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to keep his commandments, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. And so Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their tents. Now, a little background, if you remember. You have, out of the 12 tribes of Israel, you have 2.5 tribes that are on the eastern side of the Jordan River. You have the other 9.5 tribes on the western side. Moses had allowed the 2.5 tribes, Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh, to stay on the eastern side of the Jordan River. If that's the territory you want, fine. But here's what he said to them. But you have to help your brethren fight on the western side of the Jordan River. You can't get all comfortable on the eastern side and just hang out there, because your brothers who are trying to take the territory on the western side of the Jordan River need your help. You have to fight with your brothers. So for 7 years, those who were given territory on the eastern side of the Jordan came over to the western side and helped their brothers fight until they had subdued the whole land. Now Joshua says, okay, the fighting is over. You 2.5 tribes, you've been faithful. You've come over here on the other side of the Jordan to help us fight, to subdue the land. You can now go back home. And with that parting instruction, he gives them 6 imperatives that I just read there. Do the commandments. Love the Lord your God. Walk in all his ways. Keep his commandments. Hold fast to him. And serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. Now you can go. And they leave. It says, now the half tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given a possession in Bashan, but to the other half of it Joshua gave a possession among their brethren on this side of the Jordan westward. And indeed, when Joshua sent them away to their tents, he blessed them, and he spoke to them, saying, Return with much riches to your tents, and very much livestock, with silver and gold, with bronze and with iron, and with very much clothing. Divide the spoil of your enemies with your brethren. And so the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh returned, and departed from the children of Israel at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan, to go to the country of Gilead, to the land of their possession, which they had obtained according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. Okay, so they say goodbye. Now something happens here, and I want you to pay particular attention to what's about to happen. Because as they depart, they do something, and it's going to get misinterpreted by their brethren, okay, by their fellow Israelites. And their fellow Israelites, because they misinterpret something, are ready to kill their brothers. It's very interesting what happens here. And pay particular attention. Why? Because I want you to notice what typically happens among Christians today. When they stopped fighting a common enemy, they turned on each other. This is what we're going to read here. There's a huge misunderstanding, but they end up about to turn on each other and about to slaughter each other because they'd stopped fighting a common enemy. When we lose sight of who the real enemy is, Satan himself, who's trying to wage war against us, trying to deceive the world. You know, it's not like when we think about church, we go, okay, you know, we gather together. We want to celebrate Jesus. We want to read the Bible. We want to, love one another. It's not like we're the good guys and the world is the bad guys, okay? We're all bad guys. We all are in need of a Savior, okay? But if we start to think that the world is the enemy, the world's not the enemy. The world is the harvest field. The world is where we're supposed to be helping people to come to the same saving knowledge that we have of Jesus. The real enemy is the one who's trying to steal, kill, and destroy. It's Satan himself. And yes, does he turn hearts and manipulate and deceive and lie and all of that? Yeah, sure. So what we see happening in our world with all this cultural garbage and all this stuff that is happening in our world like we've never seen before, we can't get angry at people because our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against Satan, who's trying to twist things and distort truth and help people to try to believe lies and convince them and persuade them about things that aren't even true. That's our common enemy. And once the church loses sight of what the real battle is, what we tend to do is then we start to turn on each other. So here's what happens. Verse 10. And when they came, this is the 2.5 tribes, when they came to the region of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a great, impressive altar. Now the children of Israel heard someone say. Can you underline that, please, in your Bibles? You want to know what that's called? That's called hearsay. That's called hearsay. When they heard someone say, behold, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh have built an altar on the frontier of the land of Canaan in the region of the Jordan on the children of Israel's side. And when the children of Israel heard of it, the whole congregation of the children of Israel gathered together at Shiloh to go to war against them. Wait, what? Whoa. Wait a minute. What's happening? Okay. Someone, you know who that someone is? Doesn't that someone bug you? It's like, who's that someone? Who's always like spreading rumors and saying things that aren't true. You hear half of the truth and then you start going around talking about it. That's hearsay. That's hearsay. That's where we get the word from. It's hearsay. Someone heard. Those stinking 2.5 tribes, they built an impressive altar. You know what that means? You know what that means? They're worshiping other gods. They're not worshiping our God. They've built some stinking altar and they've resorted to paganism. They're worshiping some other god now. Isn't this terrible? Yeah, that's terrible. And they start sharpening their swords. Like, we ought to go kill them all. Yeah, let's kill them all. They've abandoned the true God. What are they doing? Well, it's because somebody heard. Nobody checked it out. And here's what we're going to find, okay? What we're going to find is this. Those 2.5 tribes, before they crossed the Jordan River, they got together and they said, you know what? We need to build an altar as a memorial so that we will never forget the true and living God. We must build this so that we will always be able to remember, and our brethren that we're leaving will always remember this altar also as a reminder that we're on the other side of the Jordan River, but we still worship the same God. So it was intended to be a memorial, a reminder, that's all. Not a pagan place of worship, nothing more, nothing less than a reminder. But if you don't know all that, you're going to sharpen your swords and want to kill them. That's what happens with hearsay. Now, this is an important moment to just kind of a teaching moment for all of us, right? Hearsay. Write this down, okay? Assumption leads to accusation. You assume something, you start to accuse. And so the rest of the chapter is in that vein. Now, we'll save most of it for next time. But assumption leads to accusation. We think you've done this, and this is now what we're accusing you of. But the remedy is, and this is an important thing to also write down, communication leads to clarification. If the 9.5 tribes had asked of the 2.5 tribes, hey, question for you. We see this really impressive altar here. We're not really sure what this is about. What's this about? It would have ended it. It would have ended it. Communication leads to clarification. It would give them the opportunity to say, oh, well, we built that because we want to always have a reminder here that we serve the same true and living God. That even though the river divides you and from us, there's no division in terms of the same God that we serve. That's what the altar's all about. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. Congratulations. And it would have been a great day. Instead, it's like, we got to kill somebody. You know how many people want to kill somebody because you don't know all the facts? That's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing to make all these assumptions. It just leads to accusation. How about having a conversation? How about communicate? How about ask some questions? Can I ask, what did you mean by that? Or can I ask, I noticed this. I don't want to misinterpret it. Can you explain this? And give people an opportunity to actually clarify something. It'll go a long way to preventing bloodshed, right? So this is important for us. This is a common problem that happens among people. You listen to hearsay. You don't know all the facts. You jump to conclusions. You start making accusations. That's not the way Christians should behave. You need to give the benefit of the doubt to somebody. Love believes all things. You trust and you verify, right? You say, I got a few questions. You explore it. You communicate. You have some conversation. And you allow a chance for clarification. It's important in relationships. It's important in friendships. It's important in work environments. This is an important principle. Hearsay has destroyed a lot of people. Don't give ear to hearsay. You confirm things, communicate, find out, get some clarification. They didn't. It almost led to bloodshed. But fortunately, it didn't, because the 2.5 tribes were able to clarify, here's what we were doing. So we'll pick up the story and see the full context later, but for tonight, let's just take home that lesson, amen? Don't give place to hearsay. Somebody said. Don't give place to hearsay. You communicate, allow a chance for clarification, because assumption only leads to accusation. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this time in your word. Thank you for this good reminder to us. It's important for us to give the benefit of a doubt to somebody, to communicate, to give a chance for somebody to clarify things. Too many conflicts have happened because somebody gives place to hearsay. And then they draw their own conclusions, and then they start making accusations. And we pray, Lord, that we would learn from this story not to give place to hearsay, not to be a party to it, not to start spreading rumors or saying things that we have no business saying. Convict us of these things, Lord. Set a trap over the door of our mouths, that we might guard our lips from giving place to saying things, and guard our ears, that we would not give place to entertaining and hearing things that we haven't verified. So help us, Lord, to be people who communicate better and give a chance for somebody to clarify things before something terrible happens. We love you, Lord. Thank you for being our refuge. Thank you for being our high tower. We can run to you and be saved. We give you praise and glory and honor in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen and amen.